Can never rely on Jez for getting anything right, Tom. I tell you.
Every single time. Right, okay, so my audio's working now. Guys, can you speak for a sec? Tom.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rand. Speak.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Okay, sorry about that. The audio was messed up. But yes, hello everyone. We are live and in charge, finally, now that I've fixed the audio. Well, I don't know why every single time I open Streamlabs, it just clears all the audio settings every single bloody time. But we made it. We're here. We're good now. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode, I believe this is 26, 27. Oh, okay, my audio's too high, let's say. Episode 26, 27 of XB2+1, which is the Xbox 2 guest show, exclusively on Patreon initially, and then live later on Spotify and YouTube. No matter when you're joining us, thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. And I'm joined by my co-host, Randall Thor19, the man with the million. What have you got a million of these days?
Nothing. Who cares? Move on. It's not about Rand. It's about our illustrious guest this week, coming off of his knockout victory against you, Jez, on Twitter, where he corrected you on the proper spelling of Kenan.
He sure did.
Warren's here from the Verge. Yeah.
Hello.
How, Tom?
Good to be here. I'm here for corrections only.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know. I honestly, I think I just misread it, and I don't know. I was tired.
Yeah, we were saying, weren't we, before we went live, that a lot of people in Microsoft just say Keenan instead of Kenan because it is, Kenan's
like
non-usual.
When I was talking to a source about it, and they were like, "Are you sure it's Keenan?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I think it's Keenan." And then you came with that tweet saying it's Kenan, and I was like, "Oh crap, it's not Keenan at all," because I thought
it's not Keenan.
No,
it's not Kel.
It's not Keenan.
It's nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know what we have, those who don't know have a clue what we're talking about. We're obviously talking about Project Kenan, with an N, as reported by professional journalist Tom Warren at The Verge. Project Kenan being the Xbox handheld, also reportedly developed by Asus, by Tom Warren and myself. But first, Tom Warren. Let's give Tom his flowers there. Yeah, so that's probably what we're going to be talking a lot about today. But, there's I wanted to talk first, Tom, a little bit about yourself. Because, for those who aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, of which there's probably very, very few listening to this, I just thought I'd want to hear a little bit about your career and how you came up and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I know, a little bit about it.
Yeah,
from the old Windows Phone days, but
oh god, yeah, that feels like a century ago. Yeah, I mean, so I kind of started the blogging stuff and writing about Microsoft or Windows stuff when I was in my teenage days. And it was kind of like a hobby. That I used to do it. I used to do it for a site called Neowin, which still exists and still going strong. And it was just sort of like a part-time thing. I wasn't even employed, it was just sort of something I did when I was 15, 16. And then I was doing that kind of on the side, and Microsoft kind of recognizes you in weird and wonderful ways when you're kind of smaller, if that makes sense. So they were like, "Oh, come out and talk at our WinHeck conference," which WinHeck these days doesn't even exist. It's the equivalent, I guess, is kind of Build. But WinHeck was a hardware conference where you would go and they would demonstrate all the funky hardware for Vista and that sort of era of Windows. So it was so key that the hardware that was powering PCs back then, whereas it's just 10 a penny now, right? So you get your GPU and you're off. But yeah, so I went out there and I did a community talk thing with Microsoft on stage, which I think if there's still a recording of it, I'm probably almost crying because I was so scared of doing it in front of I don't know how many people it was, but and then yeah, I did a bunch of that and some community stuff around Neowin and the forums and all that sort of stuff. And I was doing that when I was kind of like still in school, and like doing my A levels in the UK. And then I kind of decided I wanted to do more with that Microsoft experience, and so I went out into the big bad world of work. And I was doing sort of like IT support initially, so I did it like locally for like schools, and then I started to do some like contract work, and I ended up with a bunch of investment banks. So I think before I joined the Verge, I was working at Morgan Stanley, looking after their trade floor in London, doing all of the sort of bespoke apps and onboarding and stuff like that. So it was kind of a completely different thing to what I'm doing now. But in the midst of like kind of doing that, I like kind of left Neowin and did Win Rumors, which was my own sort of personal blog, where I focused on Microsoft, obviously,
I remember
and sort of built that up. Yeah, yeah, and that was like kind of in the Windows Phone era, so it was like a good time to be sort of focused solely on Microsoft. Yeah, and so I did that, and then I kind of was like, I don't want to work in the corporate, financial banking system anymore. It just wasn't me. It never kind of was. So then the opportunity came to join the Verge and transition Win Rumors over to the Verge and stuff. So that's how I kind of landed at the Verge 13 years ago now. So I'm like part of the furniture there now. And yeah, I've been mainly focused on Microsoft at the Verge, and just a lot of the PC stuff and sort of some general tech stuff. And in the gaming side of things, I obviously focus a bunch on Xbox, but I don't like review games or, do the previews of games and stuff. It's not really my kind of thing. I love games, but I'm not very good at writing about them, particularly around like the narratives and stuff. But I focus on the sort of more technical side of games. So I'm interested in the GPUs and all the ray tracing stuff and all that sort of stuff. So how the hardware impacts games and our experiences there. So that's kind of my experience in the Xbox world. But yeah, that was a a rundown of my career.
Yeah,
That's basically. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that, but yeah, that's how I came to where I am now.
I think we've had similar trajectories there, like going from hobby blogging and then working in IT support. I kind of feel like the IT support to blogging on ramp is, a whole thing that needs to be studied. But
it's quite similar because like when I was doing some of that IT support stuff, a lot of it I'd be like teaching colleagues a lot of stuff about Windows or teaching
like
people that are using it. So,
things.
yeah, and that's kind of like what you are doing as a journalist. You kind of explain things, or you're supposed to like take a complicated subject to make it readable for people. So there's some definite crossover there.
I never really thought about it like that, but it is true. Like when you sort of being an IT guy, you're kind of doing the journalism in a way. Having to simplify things for people. But it's been awesome. Like sort of growing the alongside you. Always feel like one step behind in some kind of way. But, like I remember, I'll tell people an anecdote. I remember one year I went to Gamescom and you were there. It was the first time I met you in real life, I think. And I was kind of like,
I remember.
Yeah, I was super nervous to be there. Like you talking about how you were nervous at that Microsoft that presentation you did. I was super nervous to be at Gamescom and you were there. And we were in this massive queue. I don't know if you remember. But you were like come on, Jez, we can get past this queue. And then you just sort of like barge through the crowd and then you go straight up to the security guys and you're like, "Hey, we've got an important meeting to go to." And they're just like, "Oh yeah, go on through." I was like, "What?" just sort of confidently barge through the whole queue, and I was
that sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay then, so that would probably saved me like a good 40 minutes there. So,
security only exists to sort of it's an elaborate operation, isn't it? Security is only as secure as you think. There's plenty of ways around them.
But that's the kind of like the thing about journalism. You kind of like sometimes you do have to sort of barge through and just do it, and not sort of wait for permission sometimes. which is
Yeah, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that hate me at rival publications when I'm like, I remember like times when I was at Mobile World Congress and someone would be photographing like this latest phone or something that had just been announced, and they were taking like, like a long time to photograph it, and I'd just come along, just grab it. When it was just sat in front of them, I'd just grab it and go and do my own photos, because everyone's on got to get it published within 5 seconds. So
you
so
gotta
I'm
get it
sure
done.
I'm known as an arsehole,
Yeah.
but
Oh well,
you gotta be.
You sometimes you gotta be, and I think
Yeah.
we broke a few eggs this week or last week when we were talking about Kennen, I suppose. So
Our little beef. Yeah, we need a diss track for our beef.
we need a diss track
Yeah.
for the epic.
You
Beef.
know, I figure we start with the question that's sort of relevant to the journalist thing. So, Jez has talked about this before, Tom. So I get your opinion on it.
Sure.
Sean Kramer wants to know more about your lives as insiders. Having to always be online and connected and be first is obviously exhausting, but what are the rewarding aspects of always being plugged into the industry? Do devs ever use insiders as conduits for community feedback as well? Since
Do you want me to answer that first?
yeah, I mean,
Sure.
Jez has talked about this before, so I mean, he can elaborate, but I'm curious to get your
Okay.
answer on that.
Yeah, I don't really see myself as like an insider per se. I know that is like a thing that people refer to people as, but I mean, like the downsides of it, I guess I'll start with is that, yeah, always being online and always, having to keep your sort of like nose ahead, I guess. Is it just, there's no like work-life balance, like this is your life essentially, which impacts personal stuff a bunch. So, yeah, so that sucks. That's the sucky side of it, the less glorious side, and the less fancy side. But in terms of like devs, like conduit for like feedback and stuff, I don't think so. Like, I mean, the thing that happens with a lot of people who want to like leak stuff, or who want to put stuff out there, is a lot of the time it just comes from people have been working on a project or something and they feel like it's going a particular way they don't want it to, so they might throw out information out there because of that. Other times it's people just want the correct information to be out there, so they might be correcting something, or they might just want to Microsoft says something about a particular project or whoever has, and they just want to correct that. So that happens a lot. And other times it's just people are just pissed off at who they work for, and they're like, I'm gonna leak all this stuff because fuck you, whoever I work for. And that happens quite a lot as well. So I think between those sort of 3 different types is trying to work out, by talking to multiple people, what's accurate. And a lot of people who work on these projects, particularly like in the gaming space, a lot of it's like tented or highly tented, so it's designed to for these companies to keep that information between a small group of people. So there could be different code names. Microsoft does like a bunch of corporate security around trying to protect that sort of stuff. So it's like being careful with how people are telling you this information, because they have their own angle on things and stuff. So yeah, it's like I don't think it's necessarily really people sort of doing it for feedback. I know that is like a persistent thing where people think like companies just leak stuff on purpose.
A controlled leak. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's such a thing that just doesn't, like, maybe in certain circumstances where like some of the phone companies might do it, just to sort of hype up their products, but I think most of the time this stuff comes out and it upsets teams more than more than them being like, oh cool, we've leaked, particularly with like, especially with games as well, right? Like the teams want to have their moment at like E3 or whatever we call it now. So yeah, it's more harm. It hurts them more than anything, right? So yeah, so it's less controlled leaks for sure.
Yeah, I think like I remember there was that whole thing about a Google Pixel being left in a bar, right? And people thought that was like they'd done that on purpose to hype it up or whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out a thank you to Mecha Gojira, who sent 10 memberships through. Thank you so much for that, mate. you know, and there's it is weird, like with leaking and stuff, because on the one hand, I mean, like Rand said, I spoke to this before, but it's like it is kind of bittersweet, because it's like, yeah, I've had a win, I'm going to get this traffic and make my boss happy, and then on the flip side, you're kind of thinking about all the people who probably now hate you because you shared their project ahead of, you know, the fanfare they were going to set up for it, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But I do think when these leaks and these things kind of do happen, Microsoft sort of, they are watching what the reactions are going to be like. So even though like they haven't shared it themselves to gather feedback or whatever, they kind of end up getting feedback incidentally, right?
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think
Yeah. They'll
yeah,
have teams of people scouring over all the reactions. You know.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So
for
like
sure.
I sort of like I suppose, you know, just to make myself feel a little less guilty. There's probably like there's probably a silver lining there if like they can look at some of the reactions and be like, okay, well, when we do eventually come to put together, you know, the press on this, these are the things we have to address. And there's certainly been some interesting reactions to Kennen, which is the big recent one, I suppose, from myself and Tom. So you know, I suppose on Kennen and stuff like that. I mean, I'll put my hands up, right? I remember a conversation me and Tom had about a year ago. It was roughly a year ago, where Tom
Right.
was you. I remember you telling me you were hearing that OEMs were going to be working on Xbox devices in the future, and I didn't believe you.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I was quite like, you know, why would they do this? You know, because on the face of it, it doesn't make a ton of sense, because you think about like the Asus aren't going to make any money on the software. So,
No. Yeah.
you know, so it's kind of like you're thinking like, where's the profitability in it coming in? And if you look at Asus's profit margins, they're about 13% on average, and they've only sold about 200,000 Asus ROG Alloys. So like, this is going to be like hyper niche, I would have thought, them making a handheld device. So like, one of the questions I often see thrown around is like, what's the point? What's the point of this device? Because it's not going to run Xbox
Yeah.
games. It's going to be a Windows device.
No. Yeah.
It's
It's
going to
Windows.
be
So to your point about what's ASUS particularly going to get out of it or whatever?
yeah. What's your
Like
take on all that?
over the decades that Microsoft like like stuff like Windows 8, they'll be like, right, OEMs, we're doing this new version of Windows, we want you to buy into it. Windows RT is a prime example, like Windows on ARM. And they'll give those OEMs incentives to do that work with them, whether that's like a split of like the revenue or like commission for like Windows Store stuff, like sales. Or there's multiple ways they've done this over the years, going back to like the very early days of Windows. Some of it got them in trouble even. But yeah, there's multiple ways they can do this. So I think with the handheld in particular, I think a lot of that is like coming from a protection sort of thing of like keeping Windows the place to play games, right? To keep it away from Linux, because obviously Valve's done a bunch of Proton work, and we know that Windows games run better on Linux, which is kind of insane. But that's the reality. So there's no stopping if Steam OS goes on a roll with OEMs, and they get this stuff into actual gaming PCs. Like, people are kind of crying out for an alternative to Windows at the moment, I feel like. So there's some elements of protecting Windows here that they'd want to do. But I think most of it is Game Pass. And I say that because I think at the moment, if you buy a Windows handheld, you boot it up, it goes into whatever OEM's crappy interface on top of Windows. Like they're trying their best, right? But it's still not a great interface. It's just a third party app, really, launcher. But that immediately takes away from Microsoft's any kind of Microsoft control of how people are launching their games, or where they're finding games, discoverability, etc. And also the ability to upsell Game Pass, right? They do it through the out of box experience right now, when you set up a Windows 11 device, but it's a very minor thing. But if you have it boot into an Xbox interface and you've got like all the guide recommendations that you have on the Xbox right now, there's a lot more opportunities to convert people over to PC Game Pass there. And I think that's definitely where they're coming at it from. And I don't know what the revenue sharing will be with OEMs or how they split that out, or anything, but I'm sure there'll be incentives for OEMs that are willing to, take this on, rather than SteamOS, because that's just the natural way that they've always done it. So yeah, I think that's kind of the why. And I think it works for OEMs as well because they can. It's an easier compatibility story to sell someone a Windows device, really, because it's going to work with your games. Whereas SteamOS is still a bit. It's great and it's pretty slick, but it's still some games just disappear from compatibility on the Steam Deck, which isn't great. And there's just some issues of like servicing and support there, which OEMs would probably want to shy away from.
And they've had a lot of issues with third-party launchers and anti-cheat and things like that. Right?
Yeah, anti-cheat is their biggest problem right now. So a bunch of games, obviously, like the more sort of multiplayer games, should we say, and the live service games, will need that, and they just don't run there. So you've got a better compatibility story. So there's a bunch of reasons, and this is still like an emerging kind of market, right? These handhelds, so it's still very niche for now, but I think long term, I think we can all kind of see where the console is heading and where it's merging and stuff, and I think it will be an important. Like these handhelds are going to be very important. I think the Switch 2 will kind of show us that even more than the Switch did.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it's like I always sort of imagine this as a device. Also, they'll be doing a lot of learning from. Because Microsoft, obviously, they get some data about how, the OEM handhelds are used already, but this will be like even more so. They'll be even more deeply involved in a device that, I don't know, for their purposes, they're considered to be first party, essentially. I mean, fans won't consider it that way, but they will probably include this. Would you think they'd include this in their hardware figures for the quarterlies?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, they don't tell anyone those numbers anyway. So,
well, they usually report like the total amount of hardware that's sold, and they're like, "Oh, hardware was down."
They report revenue, right?
Yeah. But I'm wondering if they'll include this in those figures, because if they're including licensed devices like headsets and stuff like that in that figure, it makes me wonder if they'd include OEM devices as well. I don't know.
I think it'll just come under Windows OEM revenue, to be honest. But
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I suppose
because it's such a small amount, you're not even really going to see it because they hide away these sort of projects.
Well, in any case,
I was wondering, Tom. So we have this device, which kind of seems like a half measure of what people actually want from an Xbox handheld, right? Like people are like, oh, this is the Xbox hand, which is your tweet, that you kind of put out there, being like, it wasn't correcting Jez's article. It was like trying to correct all the headlines that said an Xbox handheld is because this is easy way to sell it. Assuming they do their own handheld, which is Jez reported as sort of the plan for 2027. I guess I have two questions. Did you ever buy into the rumors, the speculation that the next console and handheld were coming in 2026? And if you're looking at what the next and the Xbox handheld from Xbox themselves, does it have to be more than just here's 1,000 Xbox Play Anywhere games? Does it have to be the whole library?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it needs to run Xbox games if it's going to be an Xbox handheld, right? Like it needs to run your library somehow. And I think that's why we're seeing the work that we're seeing now, which is the sort of like unification or the merging work of Windows and Xbox. So it's that initial sort of like experience work.
You gave the code name for that, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of some of it. There's so many different code names. So yeah, there's there's a bunch of different projects for this stuff. But that's the initial work, I think, and then I think that they're going to build an emulator, right? Like, I mean, it seems pretty obvious that they're doing that. And then that will be the work that will be lit up later on. The big question is whether they keep that for their own Xbox handheld. I don't think they would. But I suspect that it'll roll into some sort of thing where you have to have a particular device of a particular, APU or whatever that will support it, be able to play these games properly. So there'll be like a minimum hardware spec to get that emulation layer going. And then you've obviously got the sort of merger of the Windows and Xbox in there as well. So then you get the dual benefits of you could play your library and plus play PC games, plus play Steam games as well. And that's another thing that's part of this sort of like unification of Xbox and PC stuff is that those Steam games will show up in Microsoft Launcher, right? Like if you have a Steam game installed, it will show up in your launcher. That's all part of like keeping people in that sort of like UI, in that experience, and not deviating too much out. Not obviously just going straight to Steam to launch your games, but you just better launch them from there. So that's a big part of it as well. But yeah, I think the emulator is probably happening. I think it has to happen, right? If they want to move the development stuff in the direction of Windows, then they have to, have some sort of way of emulating those older Xbox games on PC, which they've experimented with a bunch over the last decade. So it's not too crazy to think that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think for me it was always like the legalities, because like Microsoft only has, for the Xbox games that are Xbox games, Microsoft can only run them or sell them on an Xbox system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if they do emulation, they're going to be stretching that legal definition of what an Xbox system is, I think, to some degree, and that kind of like throws up
it's
some
going to be interesting.
Yeah, some interesting legal questions there. I suppose like need to speak to someone who understands the law around some of that stuff. I mean, I suppose Microsoft has if anyone would have the knowledge of how to bridge that from a legal perspective, it's probably Microsoft, and Brad
and
Brad Smith.
It's just also it's just also like the market will be different in a couple of years as well. And he's like, at the moment they're also pushing the Xbox Play Anywhere narrative to sort of bridge that gap right now. And they're obviously doing some work there to sort of incentivize publishers and developers to go that way. But I don't think that's like a long-term thing, right? Like it's still these publishers still want to sell their games twice, right? Why would they only want to sell them once? So it's trying to incentivize them to do that is tricky. But yeah, I think longer term, like they have to kind of, if they really want developers to build on Windows and this Xbox and whatever this merge is, then they have to have some way to play your library for sure. Because otherwise you're going to leave a bunch of people behind in their libraries, and that's just all they're going to do is they'll migrate to Windows and they'll just migrate to Steam, So that's going to be a huge problem.
I think that's what stresses Xbox fans out the most at the moment. It's like, what happens to my library in this situation? My digital library. And I think Microsoft they've kind of hinted at some of this stuff, like Sarah Bond's forwards compatibility team announcement from last year, for example, kind of hints that they're looking into it. But the fact there's like nothing concrete, and then it's also like, well, this is the same kind of team that was supposed to be making a mobile phone store, a mobile gaming store for Xbox, right? That never materialized. Have you heard anything about that recently? The Xbox
I haven't,
mobile
no.
gaming store that was supposed to happen.
They've gone a bit quiet. And I think it was just such a. They had this habit sometimes of announcing stuff before they're ready, which they obviously did with what was the little cloud console? Keystone, right?
Keystone.
Like they did it. They announced that thing like 2 or 3 times, and then it never shipped. So they do sometimes have a habit of being like, we're doing this thing, we're doing it there, and then it doesn't happen. So like even when xCloud was originally announced, they said it would include your library, right, of games. So and it didn't. So
oh yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's because they were terrified of Google though at the time. So
yeah, exactly.
which
Well,
is kind of funny to
Um,
look back on. Both the PlayStation and Xbox were terrified of Stadia.
yeah, it's
yeah,
funny.
they were terrified, but luckily they did it the right way, which is like having it as an option, like as an add-on rather than fully
Yeah.
positioning it as the future. So.
What do you think about the 2026 rumors? You know, there's been a debate about when the next handheld, the actual handheld, the next console come in.
Yeah, to
Uh,
be honest, I haven't heard a ton about hardware stuff myself personally. So I think the 2026 rumors were probably a little bit too soon, right? Because they had those FTC documents that leaked out that they were going to have a refreshed console, right? And then they scrapped those plans. So they've obviously had to rework what they're doing. And I think their push at the moment is obviously merging Xbox and Windows on the handheld front, to then make that their next gen platform, right? Their dev platform as well. So I think having that ready for 2026 was always a little bit tight. So considering this stuff is probably later this year, so
yeah.
yeah, so I think 2027 makes a lot more sense.
Well, in that direction of the console, the next one, got a question here from John. Says this question is for Tom and Jez. Everyone is talking about Steam being on the next Xbox. What do you think? But what do you both think the reaction will be if this turns out not to be the case? Will this impact sales goodwill from Xbox fans? He's not wrong. I see a lot of people already sort of saying like this is gonna happen. Like Steam's gonna be on the next console or what have you, and it very well could be. But how would it be implemented or whatever? How do you feel about the whole Steam being on the console and all and the handheld and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on how the Canon stuff goes, and what sort of like metrics they see of like converting people to Game Pass, as to whether they want to open up the Xbox platform. Like they have promised this. It's not even just Phil saying this in random interviews. They had a commitment to open up the Microsoft Store, the Windows Store side of things, before. And I think the day is probably coming where these digital stores on, like even Steam, but the digital stores on like consoles will come under regulatory scrutiny like never before. Like they kind of were during the FTC stuff a little bit, and especially in the Epic trial as well. So I think Microsoft see that kind of day is coming, so they're going to have to open up somehow, but they need to do it in a way where they kind of also keep people in their own sort of store and their own ecosystem and all that sort of stuff. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they are truly going to this Windows and Xbox merge platform, that we do eventually see Steam games on a future Xbox console. But I think it's more, when you look at this broadly, it's like, what is the next Xbox console? Like, what is an Xbox console anymore? If they go down this route, because it's opening up to these handhelds being considered as Xbox consoles, right? And which is part of their whole "this is an Xbox" marketing stuff, which obviously felt a little bit early, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of things with Canon and stuff, it's like it all sort of pieces together as to where they're taking things. So yeah, I just like, my question is, what do you think an Xbox console is these days?
I mean,
A place to play your games without having to play them on PC, I suppose. I don't know, plug and play.
yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose
so
like
you don't care if Windows is underneath, right? Like you don't see
Yeah,
it.
like
Yeah,
yeah, I never see it. Why would I care?
yeah, you just want to be able to play your library and have the Xbox experience and all the platform stuff like the cloud saves and everything. So, and
Yeah,
I think that's where they're heading. And I think Windows will just be at the background of that. It's just whether they expose Steam on the sort of like console stuff that they do is tricky, but they're going to have to expose it on the Windows handheld side of things, initially, because obviously OEMs will want people to have access to Steam. So yeah, I think it's where that line divides between those sort of devices is going to be very interesting.
my
Mhm.
my question on the Steam front is like, you know, or I suppose a lot of people's question. Like, I get this question a lot. It's like, if Steam's on the Xbox, will developers even bother making games for the Microsoft Store? because they've got that issue already. I mean,
Yeah.
the Microsoft Store is pre-installed on Windows, but developers never bring their games to it unless they've got a Game Pass incentive. There's like no incentive for
Yeah.
them to bring their games there right now because there's no
Yeah, and
users.
like yeah, and like some of the certification packaging stuff is still a little complicated there compared to doing a Steamworks game.
Yeah, that's
So I
the
think
issue.
yeah, I think that is the big issue of getting people into the store. If you could just copy and paste your Steam game, between the two, then I think a lot more developers do it because it's just it's another place to sell your game, right? So, especially if you think about it, it would make more sense if more developers lean that way, really, because the cut, I think, isn't it 12% on the Microsoft
Yeah,
Store
it's something like
compared
that.
to 30% Steam. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like
But
if I was told if a Xbox Play Anywhere developer, if their game is purchased from PC, but played on
yeah,
Xbox, they still get the bigger cut. So it's like an extra
right.
incentive to actually make a Play Anywhere game. So it's like,
Yeah, that
and
makes
they're
sense.
still not really pursuing it organically.
Oh, right.
Well,
Yeah.
we've seen bits and pieces. A lot of Japanese developers are taking it up, without
Right.
the Game Pass incentive, but Western developers don't.
Yeah, they just don't seem to care. Or
Yeah.
they'll put their games on there and it'll be like the old versions of the games. Or like it'll be like
Yeah,
missing DLSS free or like just
yeah,
loads of weird stuff.
or
Which is a
bugs,
shame.
stuff like that.
Yeah, or there'd be weird bugs, yeah, that you just don't see. And I think they're very aware of that, and like a lot of that still comes down to like the UWP stuff that they tried to do, particularly around obviously Windows 8, but Windows 10 as well,
Yeah,
where they kind of locked things down there. And I think their biggest challenge, Microsoft's biggest challenge on like this, whatever this merge is going to be, is getting those like store teams to be unified, getting the platform stuff to be unified, in a world where it's like there's a lot of politics internally around that, right? Because it's like Windows and Xbox are separate teams, right? And they have separate ways where they create revenue and separate objectives and stuff. But I think it helps with like Phil. He's on the senior leadership team and he has like a big remit now, right? He's a CEO of Microsoft Gaming, so I think he has more push on the Windows side than ever before.
true that.
So I think that's why we're sort of seeing this now, where it's been driven from the Xbox side rather than the Windows sort of org side. So
Yeah,
yeah, so hopefully it results in something decent, but it's execution is going to be key.
Yeah, execution is always key. Turning to the games, game talk. Microsoft seems they're going to have a pretty big year this year. They just announced Towerborn's coming out in April, which is like, whoa, slow down, Microsoft. You got a ton of games coming out in April. There's rumored that Oblivion remake's coming out in April.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I specifically wanted to ask you about Gears E-Day, Tom, because you have been banging the
Yes.
drum for that game since it was revealed last year. Always sort of saying potentially releasing in 2025. I even think your report stated that it was currently planned. At least last year, you said it was currently planned to launch before Fable.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was when they first were sort of introducing it for sure.
so what do you think because it sort of seems like maybe Gears E-Day is not hitting this year. There's still supposed to be, Special Nick's rumor about the Gears collection that him and Jez went back and forth on for 3 years. Will that finally be
Yes.
revealed this year? I did see the voice actor for Cole and the voice actor for Dom both posted Gears E-Day promotional material yesterday or the day before.
Right.
So obviously that started the rumor mill about Gears E-Day potentially releasing this year. Have you heard anything new about a potential release window for
I
the next
haven't.
Gears
No.
game?
No, I haven't, but I wouldn't be surprised if it still sneaks it in somehow this year, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's 2026 at this point. But then obviously Fable's gone to 2026 now, so
I
and you
think
got Outer Worlds 2 and Ninja Gaiden right at the end of the
Yeah,
year, but
and the new Call of
there's a
Duty.
bit of it, and yeah, but there's a kind of a little bit of a gap because Doom's May, isn't it?
yeah,
Is
mate.
it May?
Doom is May
Yeah.
15th.
So there
Part
is
of
a
me
little
thinks
bit of a gap
like
there for
maybe
a
there
big game.
was a sort of hard 2026 launch window for E-Day, but then
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto started, announcing its launch window, and then
Yeah.
some developers got maybe cold feet. I don't know. Maybe that's a factor to some degree.
Do we think GTA 6 is actually going to drop this year?
What do you think? Because I don't think.
I
I
don't
think
think so.
I think it's next year.
Yeah, I can't see it happening this year.
I think it happens this year.
Really?
I'm gonna be the optimist.
There's a really small window for them to release that game. Granted, they could easily hit that window and be the best-selling game ever, probably, or at least the biggest entertainment launch of all time. But I
Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
if we get to like the end of June and we haven't seen another trailer or we haven't heard much more about it, then I think it's not shipping this year, personally. But
Were you surprised about the Fable delay?
no, not really. I think it was.
It seems like
it was
everybody
always,
wasn't surprised. Like, yeah, that game's
yeah,
not coming.
it was always penciled in for like late 2025, as far as I'm aware. So there's always the potential to slip, right? So yeah, I'm not surprised, but it's looking good from what we've seen. And I kind of trust Playground to get it right. Like they're a good dev studio. So
They've also they stole a bunch of Rockstar and CD Projekt Red developers for Fable, so they've really boosted their pedigree in that space, I think. So
Yeah.
What do you think is going to fill the gap though in the holiday?
for Xbox,
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Xbox. So Xbox has Ninja Gaiden 2 and Outer Worlds 2, which could release
you mean
like
4?
September, October, and
Ninja
then
Gaiden
the new
4.
Call of Duty. Oh, Ninja Gaiden 4. My bad. Sorry. Ninja Gaiden 4 and Outer
Well, that's
Worlds
not
2.
exclusive, right?
Well, Xbox doesn't do exclusives anymore.
Yeah, but it's not a launch exclusive.
Well, Tom asked what Xbox has, and those are the games that are currently slated for fall this year.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, if we're gonna talk about exclusives, like, I don't know. I think that ship sailed.
Jailed.
Yeah.
Sailed. I don't know. I don't really. I know there's people holding out. I guess I'll ask you this time. There are people holding out hope that, okay, Outer Worlds 2 legacy game, Doom legacy game, Ninja Gaiden has legacy on PlayStation, blah 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 blah. There are people holding out hope that something like Gears Day or something like Fable or State of Decay 3, Contraband, the stuff that's probably coming next year that has no ties to PlayStation, that those games will be at least timed exclusive. I sort of feel like I think most things, if not all things, will be day one at this point.
I think it's gonna be a bit of a mix because just from the fact that some of this dev work would have been going on for years, and it's like it's not quick and easy sometimes to port games over to PS5, right? Like there's stuff you have to do, and it takes time. And we saw that with Indiana Jones, right? That was well, it's supposed to be April, right? But we still haven't.
That's a quick turnaround. 4 months.
It's pretty quick. Yeah, it's pretty quick. Yeah. But yeah, like other games, I don't know. I feel like there still will be some gaps there, at least initially. But I think going forward, yeah, like I think it's going to be pretty much day and date, right, for the PS5 stuff. Because and a lot of the stuff that they're doing, like with the Gears collection and some of the Halo stuff, like bringing that across to PS5, like you could see where they're going with that. Like if they bring out another Halo in the future, is that going to be on PS5 day and date? Probably. So it just gets people used to it. It gets you like them used to the fact that these big franchises are going across. Like Forza's obviously gone across. So Gears is next. And then Halo will follow at some point. So yeah, and then I just think that, but there's no like this is happening then, and this is the crossover point, and that means that every game's will be day and date after this date. It's like it's not as fine cut as that. I think there's still some room. So
right,
yeah. But for me, I think the turning point. There's been a few turning points. Obviously, Forza was one of them. Gears will be in Halo, but also Starfield. Like when that goes, like that'll be an interesting one as well to see how people react to it. But I think by that point, people would just be so used to it, it won't be as crazy as it once sounded. So
So Starfield will be a good game now.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
Finally.
I mean,
there's room.
they were originally going to do it with that expansion, so and then I don't know what happened, but
There's
Yeah.
Do you
strong
think that-
rumors that there are strong rumors that it's going to drop this year because there's PlayStation iconography being data mined in the modding platform or whatever.
Yeah, and they do
Yeah, I
have
mean,
an
they-
expansion scheduled for later this year, so maybe that's
they
when you
do,
launch
and
it.
they have been working on it for a while, so it should be ready.
Should be being the key word.
Yeah,
Because like the Forza
Definitely.
Horizon 5 thing was supposed to happen last year too, but it didn't.
yeah, and that's what I mean. It's hard for them to be like, okay, say we've got, I don't know, E-Day or whatever, or Fable or State of Decay. Say we want to put those on PS5 as well, but they have original dates for Xbox. It's like, do they give those teams more time to tune the Xbox version? Then they're doing a PS5 port of any of those games or whatever. And it's like sometimes they're going to do a model where it's like, okay, we launch this on Xbox, like Indiana Jones, and then 3-4 months later we launch it on PS5, and this is where we expect sales to be, and this is where we expect them to be if we'd launched on day one. And I think stuff's going to slip and move around based on that. But they are on this sort of, you can see it now. Like, I think, who is it? Clobril? You
Mhm.
wrote about it, Jez, right? That
Yeah.
like studio's roadmap. You can see they're on like a consistent delivery of Xbox games now, and that quality bar has been raised. We saw it last year. All right, Flight Simulator was a bit rough when it launched, but Black Ops 6 was great. Indiana Jones was great. So they're on, and even Hellblade 2 was pretty decent. They're on this like roll now, it feels like, and I don't think they're going to slow that train down just for PS5 ports. But yeah, some of them will probably be day and date, but I think some of them are going to follow a little bit later. So, but I think they know how much money they make from this now. So I don't think there's any going back now. So yeah.
Yeah, there's no going back.
By the time
Just-
the train is in the station, people have been well and truly used to it.
Yeah. Jez wrote an interesting article about the ABK stuff yesterday about how slow Microsoft has been in integrating like the ABK games into Game Pass.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Because there's a part of me that sort of feels like all these Call of Duty games, these old ones, I sort of kind of feel like they're going to stretch that over years if they do them all in and
Yeah.
it sort of feels like, because if you go look at the initial announcement back in January 22 on the Xbox Wire blog, it literally says,
Yeah.
at close, we will put as many games in the Game Pass PC and console as we can. And when it closed, they didn't add anything. And they've added like 6 or 7 games since then. And
Yeah,
it really
I know people are like, oh, are they trying to like stretch it out, or are they waiting for a particular day or whatever? I think a lot of it's just because it's so complicated to look at those older games and get them into Game Pass, and some of them they're not even modernized, right? So it's like getting them on the cloud saves platform and all that sort of stuff. There's like real dev work to do there that they have to do for some of them. So I think that's a big part of it. Then there's like licensing. They might have to even go to like old voice actors, right, and for like royalties contracts and stuff, to include them in Game Pass. Like, it depends how these contracts were written back then. So there's definitely licensing issues there, I think, as well. Even though they own all this IP and stuff now. But yeah, like I think it's a mixture of those that's kind of holding some of this stuff back. So they've done some, and I think they'll just roll as and when they're ready. I think. I don't know if there's going to be a big drop, but
Yeah, I
Do
do
you
think
see
some
them-
people underestimate the nitty gritty complexities on some of that stuff, and they think it's just a case of clicking a button and our prototype now works, or
Well,
Singularity.
see,
yeah,
look, maybe someone could have asked Phil this when he was doing his interview rounds or whatever, but I feel like that's an easy. If someone would say, "Hey, what's up with the ABK stuff?" Like you could easily say, "We're working through it through the legal issues or the license issues." And I think people would understand. Like when they ended the back and pat program, they were like, "Hey, this is pretty much it because of licensing problems." And with that said,
Yeah, true.
I wanted to ask you, Tom, like, uh, people have been expecting them to sort of do another batch of back compat games for the ABK stuff, the ones that they
Hmm.
didn't do, like Singularity, or maybe going back and getting the licenses for the old Transformers games or the old Spider-Man games. Do
Yeah.
you think that is something that's going to happen, or has the time kind of moved on at this point, and then that you don't really think they're going to do anything with the back catalog like 360 games?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically, but like it wouldn't be surprise me if they do some. I think it's really going to depend on whether they think people will convert for Game Pass if they do these particular games or not. I think that'll be a big part of it, or whether they can resell the games and whether that makes sense. Even whether they port some of the games or whatever, like because they're obviously on a bit of a roll with some of these bringing back some of the older games and porting them across to PS5 and stuff. So I mean, it's gonna depend on the titles, right? But there's so much licensing work involved that it's tricky. That's kind of what stalled them the last time. So I don't know whether it's possible, but it would be a nice surprise for the summer showcase if they had something.
It would be awesome. I think like when I I signed off that article with a comment from Crusader on Twitter, who he said to me in DM, it would be a nice gesture to show they're not done with console. I think you kind of like hit the nail on the head where it was like, before when they were costing out some of this stuff, the point of it was a value add for console, but now it's kind of like, well,
Right.
if we know we kind of hit the maximum of what we can do with console, and the generations coming up are not interested in console, and there's
It's true.
even less than ever, like those younger generations, they ain't gonna care about Singularity or Prototype or any of these classic games that no one's
Yeah.
ever heard of, and increasingly like older gamers aren't interested either, and if they are interested, they've probably got them on PC already. It kind of like the value proposition of actually doing that is probably not there in as much as like people might not want to hear that. But that's
Yeah,
probably
I
just
think you're right.
Microsoft's thought process on it. I would think. I don't.
Definitely, and it's also the cloud stuff kind of complicates some of the licensing issues as well, right? For some of
Mhm.
these
Yeah,
games,
yeah.
and they obviously want to offer that as a way as an incentive, especially if they're doing this mobile store and
Mm.
all the mobile Copilot
Do you
AI
think the
stuff.
mobile store is ever going to happen? I sort of get this feeling that Google, the court's going to side with Google, and the Xbox mobile store just will never take off because
Yeah, I feel like their
nothing's going to change.
strategy. Yeah, their strategy for like the store and like some of that mobile work has been centered on regulatory s- work in the US and Europe, which hasn't gone perhaps as smoothly or as quickly as they were hoping. Because obviously the EU side, like they've opened up the App Store on the Apple side, but it's only if you are in the EU and you have an EU account, all that sort of stuff. So if you're in the US or you're in the UK, then tough luck. You can't get those alternative stores. And I'm sure Microsoft and Epic and everyone else would rather it be a lot easier. But yeah, the mobile store for Xbox, I feel like it's just going to be a website. And
Mm.
it's just going to be like, oh, here's our mobile store initially. Here's how you can get some
So,
in-app purchases for
s-
games and deals and whatever.
and sideload APKs maybe.
Yeah, maybe silo APKs, yeah. But I don't think it's going to be a ton of stuff yet because I think they were kind of also work at hoping. Do you remember they had that little back and forth about launching? What was it? They were going to change the Xbox Android app so that you could buy a game and then stream it immediately.
Um,
And then they had to kind of like walk back from that because the court, the judge, like ruled to basically allow Google to continue the way of doing things, essentially.
oh
So
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stopped Microsoft in its tracks. So there's lots of little things like that that they're kind of banking on. and they're doing work to like assume that regulatory stuff is going to change. And I think they're getting a bit caught up, or they were getting a bit caught up by that. I don't really know where they're at with that right now, but yeah, I don't think it's going to launch in the vision that they have for it anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree.
What about? Here's one for you. Assassin's Creed's just is about to release. Ubisoft's been in the news.
Yeah.
So I guess this is like a two-prong one. There's reports that Microsoft and EA were looking to buy IPs. And what do you feel is how do you think this whole Ubisoft saga is going to end up? Is it going to get sold to somebody? Are they going to create that private company to sell the IPs to so they can maintain control of Ubisoft? Is there any actual movement on Microsoft wanting any Ubisoft IPs? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know really what's going to happen with that, but I feel like it's going to be a mess no matter what happens,
Yeah.
because it feels like a mess right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but will Microsoft want to pull apart IPs? I don't know. They also had the other complicated thing of their involvement of the CMA deal with Ubisoft, which is Ubisoft controls the cloud gaming rights to Xbox games, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that complicates
Is it
any of
all
their.
Xbox games or just the ABK games?
Um,
I think it's just
I'm
the
trying to remember
ABK
now.
stuff.
I think it was just the ABK stuff, as far as I remember. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look it up. But it's just a complicated matter of if they want to acquire IP, does that trigger some sort of weird regulatory oversight in the EU or what? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the terms of that exact contract.
I don't know if you
Ubisoft
saw
did.
I don't know if you saw this, Tom, but I read an article in the BBC with the new head of the CMA, and
Oh, yeah.
they were kind of like expressing regret for how Microsoft was treated, kind of,
Right.
and they were talking about the Facebook ruling from before as well, and they're like, we want the UK to be open for business, blah 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 blah, and all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
some
New
people,
administration and all that.
new administration, yeah, and some people were asking me
Yeah.
like, could Microsoft use Ubisoft's precarious position to reacquire the cloud rights or something like that, right? I don't know. It's so
I doubt
interesting with
that,
the
but
oh,
it would be kind of funny if they just acquired a Ubisoft and then, well, yeah, I guess they
oh,
do.
right,
They
yeah.
do, but yeah.
It's kind of weird because it's like stuff like that could save Ubisoft from going under, and it's like you might end up regulating the company out of business, you know, by not letting
Yeah.
a bigger company acquire them. But then also at the same time, you're consolidating the company even further and restricting competition. It's a weird thing, regulation. It's kind of like you're damned if you
It
do and you're
is.
damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's like the EU do a bunch of like great work and stuff, and then like there'll be like a cookie prompt on every website because of their work they've done, which is just ends up being a really
Annoying.
irritating thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes when they do the regulatory oversight of stuff, they don't look further out, at where things can change or where there could be innovation and stuff. So
It's like a monkey paw kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Careful what you
exactly,
wish for, right?
exactly, yeah.
I
But
think
yeah, Ubisoft, I don't know. It's a mess. It's gonna continue to be a mess, unfortunately. And I feel sorry for the people working on the games there and all the uncertainty around it. So
I mean, speaking
Yeah.
of companies being in a mess, and I suppose this is maybe near and dear to you. Like, how do you feel? I want to know your take. How do you feel about the way Bungie's been handled since they came to be acquired by PlayStation? Because obviously, that
yeah,
as we know, Tom is a big Destiny guy.
I
And
used to.
I used to be a big Destiny guy. Phil
Yeah,
used to be a big Destiny guy too, but I know a lot of Destiny people who really love that game and really enjoyed that game and what it offered, and it just feels like they've just, I don't know, not really fully appreciated or understood what they even had that was special there. So as someone who did play the game, I'm
yeah.
curious what your opinion is of in the current state of it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous as to where Bungie will go in the future. I feel like they've obviously got Marathon coming up, and I think they're going to start doing their public play tests of that soon. So that'll be interesting to see where that lands. But Destiny kind of like reached its like natural conclusion with the Lightness and Darkness saga. So I feel like that was a point for a lot of people to sort of step away from it anyway. And then obviously the Sony stuff had kind of like happened just before, like all that wrapped up, like a couple of years before. But I feel like, given the way that things are going with Destiny, and like the player base is still kind of cratering, they've done some interesting stuff in recent season. I don't think it's enough for like to draw back lapsed players, but I think eventually Sony will just kind of like strip them for parts, really, in the saddest way possible. But because they already kind of have started doing that, they've taken out some of the talent and formed a new studio and stuff. So I feel like that's ultimately where Bungie is going to end up, unless Marathon is some surprise hit, which, given their work with PvP in Destiny, I have some reservations, to be honest. So, but we'll see. I really hope it is, because I don't want to see Bungie go away, or be broken up.
I feel that.
Because Destiny and Halo, like, iconic. So yeah, even if you hate Destiny, it's still Destiny.
Yeah, I'm not a big Destiny fan, but it's like I was rooting for it, as a Warcraft player.
Yeah.
The idea of something like Warcraft that is a shooter is really appealing to me. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, you got all the raids and stuff.
Yeah, and raids and chasing the loot and all that kind of stuff. But
the thing with Destiny is
execution
there's so much. Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say. Like the thing is that there's always been so much opportunity for Destiny, but there's the execution of like making it that true social space was never quite there. I don't know if that's like they're limited by the engine or whatever, but it always felt like they were limited in like fulfilling their vision of it.
Yeah, I think part of it was just so expensive. I think like because it's all dedicated servers, but it's also like also photorealistic graphics, which is way more expensive. Like if I'm streaming Warcraft now for this podcast, and like you can see like this area they added for the game is absolutely
you can see
huge.
the pixels.
Yeah. But you can see the pixels. But the area they've added is huge. It's dense. It's vertical. It's crammed with quests and things to do. Like absolutely crammed. And it's like there's no way you could put something in the game that had this much content. They added a whole new vehicle system, for God's sake. And it's like there's no way you could do this if it was photorealistic. I think. So I think Destiny kind of, I don't know it. And also, Destiny has no subscription either. No subscription model. So how do you pay for it?
That's the biggest problem with Destiny. I think it's just the way that they make money on it. Because obviously it's technically a free to play game, but then you have to buy the expansion packs, and then you have to buy a battle pass and sort of thing, like a seasonal pass. And it's just like this. So and then they also like want you to buy, there's like microtransactions as well for like gear and stuff. And it's like there's so many different ways that they're trying to make money out of the game that it's like they need to really focus on what they want it to be, in terms of like how they want to people to pay for the game. Because it's just that's not been working.
Yeah, I think a lot of people complain about how like WoW costs a monthly fee, but it's the results speak for itself, right? Like Blizzard knows exactly how much money they're getting every month, so that they know how much content they can fund every month, and it's a lot of content, and you do get to really great bang for your buck. I kind of feel like this game, but I don't know. I
think if Bungie like had the funding to be able to say, Destiny is this much a month, and we're going to deliver, a new raid every 6 months or every year or whatever, new dungeons and all that sort of stuff. Then people might get behind it.
Did it have an optional subscription at all?
Because like Fallout, what, you mean like a monthly subscription?
Yeah, Fallout has its Fallout First monthly subscription. So it's like Fallout First. Fallout 76 tries to do like the best of both worlds, where it's like, yeah, you can play for free, but there's also this monthly subscription where you get like a bunch of extra perks and, you know, persistent worlds and all these kind of features on
You know,
top.
Destiny's more like say you're a free to play player, you'll be able to like join your friends in like a fire team, and then they'll like go into a part of the world. They'll try to load in, and you won't have access to that content. So then you won't be able to join them.
Yeah.
So then it's like it's basically a FOMO model, essentially. So then you have to go and work out what, and it's always very complicated for new players or returning to like work out what content you need to buy or whatever, what you have to get to then, you know, be able to do that activity.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a messy model, and they've kind of, I don't know. I don't think that's ever going to get streamlined now.
Maybe the answer is Destiny 3.
Yeah, I
Clean
think it is.
slate. Go with a new business model from the ground up. But then it's like so much investment, and it's like, is it the right time to be investing in something like that given the state of things? I don't know.
That's the problem I think they have. So I think that's why I think a lot of it, like marathon matters to Destiny as much as it does to Bungie. So I think it's going to feed into whatever revenue and investment that they'll have.
You know, the big talk that's probably going on at GDC and in general, like for a lot of companies, is AI. Microsoft revealed their Copilot for gaming. How prevalent do you think AI use will be within the industry and at Microsoft and Xbox? Do you think that's something that's just going to take over? Will it have practical uses for people? Like, I know, like the thing they see is like, oh, just ask Copilot, like, what do I use with wood in Minecraft, and stuff. Like, how do you see that all playing out in the future? 10 years from now, what will gaming look like, Tom? Will it just be run by AI?
Oh god. Yeah, we won't be playing games. They'll just be you go to work and you'll have someone farming your materials in a game for you. And it would be an AI.
We won't even have to
God.
podcast. Just tell our AI counterparts to do a show, right?
Dude, that's already a thing in WoW. You already get botters in World of Warcraft where there's just a robot flying around mining, and sometimes it'd be like 8 accounts following one character and just mining the same mining node or getting the herbs. But,
yeah, because you can do it in some games. You can just like macro stuff and just leave your PC on, right? So yeah, I'm sure that sort of stuff is going to be very prevalent with AI. But in terms of like Microsoft stuff, like they kind of like ripped the Band-Aid off with the Muse stuff recently, and now they're kind of like talking about the Xbox Copilot stuff, and that stuff just feels like way too concept to me. I've seen a bunch of like Microsoft concept stuff over the years that never ships or doesn't ship quite the way that they hoped it would, and this has got that written all over it, for sure. So I don't. The fact that they're launching it only in mobile, like I feel like they haven't really explained or shown exactly what that experience is going to be, because I think it's going to be very limited. I think it's going to be like, download and install a game for me, do this thing in the dashboard for me or whatever. But I don't think it's going to be like hopping in a game with you anytime soon and guiding you around. Like, I think that's still a ways off. Not most of all because there's a lot of compute involved in that. So they need to get the models down to be able to actually do that and make them reliable as well. So like these models are drawing people with 6 fingers at the moment. So they ain't going to be helping me out in Overwatch, are they?
My conspiracy theory is that this is all sort of like what Xbox is doing to keep Satya Nadella at bay, and being like, "Oh yeah, we're working on AI. We love AI. It's great. Look at all this AI." And really, it's just, you know, for the shareholder hype and not actually products that'll ship. That's my dumb conspiracy theory. But
I think the Muse stuff, like I think they see it internally like as bigger than they kind of like let on. And I say that in a way that they showed it off in such a really researchy kind of way, and it was running at like whatever it was, like 360p or something, at like 10 frames a second or whatever. But I feel like they're getting ready to then have a bunch of AI games that you can play, right, or experiment with. And I think it's, they see that as like some sort of opportunity for like casual games. around there. So I'm curious to see where that will go. But
Yeah.
in terms of on the platform and stuff, like we already have a ton of AI stuff in Xbox already, like particularly for the moderation side. And I think there's a tendency when people announce AI products or something's AI powered or whatever, is for immediately people to be like, ugh, disgusting, never going to touch this. And it's like, well, hang on a second, you're sending that message on a platform that literally uses AI to moderate, that tweet or whatever. Like, you're already using AI, whether you want to use it or not. It's just, I think people need to realize that the chatbot stuff is crappy right now, and the image generation is like whatever. But I think the fundamental stuff with AI, where it can actually improve things, is all under the hood. Like kind of like how cloud was a buzzword for so many years, and it's just like cloud is cloud now, right? Everything's stored in the cloud. Your export saves everything. I mean, that's where AI will head.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's gonna this whole chatbot thing and assistant stuff. Sure, it will assist you better and stuff, but I don't think it's gonna. The vision is there, but I don't think the reality is gonna match that anytime soon.
Yeah. And I noticed that they've greenlit another AI feature recently. On the Xbox
Right.
app on PC, you can search very generally for types of games. So you can search, for example, I
You
don't
like
know,
natural language, right?
yeah, games with zombies,
Yeah.
or I tried sexy games last night. It didn't show me many sexy games. I'll be frank. One of them was
They need to tweak that algorithm.
Hellblade 2 is a sexy game according to Microsoft.
Very sexy, yeah.
Super
Apparently.
sexy.
Yeah, super sexy. But yeah, that's I suppose when it like does its job under the hood, like you don't even think of it as AI. You don't think of the 6-fingered
Yeah.
memes and shit like that. So
Yeah, and that sort of stuff is actually super useful. Like improving search, like they're doing it on the Windows side. It's like, yeah, great. Like I actually do want search to be better, and I don't care whether it's using an AI model or not, because that's not like replacing someone's job or taking away creativity or whatever. Like
yeah.
it's improving some crappy process. Like that's where AI can be beneficial. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I want to see more of. So, and I want to see less people being like, "Ah, fuck this new AI feature in with like Windows search," because it's like, well, no, this is good.
Yeah, so
Like those are the sort of things we should be happy about.
yeah, there is that super knee jerk reaction to AI, which is kind of irritating. I mean, we do so much
Yeah,
traffic on AI now, on just covering news about AI, like the different models and the deep
right.
seeks and the drama and the
Yeah,
hype and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of interest in this stuff, even though like it's it's popular to hate, just sort of automatically hate on it. Because
I think it's just because the way that the platform holders have kind of gone about it is just in this weird like, here's a chatbot that's gonna generate images for you and like respond to you.
yeah,
Whereas I think in reality, the way that people actually use it is going to be in these sort of boring ways that actually do improve things overall.
yeah, I agree. I tend to agree. It kind of reminds me of that Mark Zuckerberg demo, the VR demo, where Mark Zuckerberg looked like some bad kid show 3D graphics, you know, where
Yeah,
they don't really they're not really good at presenting why it's good, because the ways that it
right.
is
Yeah,
good, like you say, it's boring, just making
yeah,
search better and
totally.
things like that. But I will say
Yeah.
that, like, on the
Mm.
gaming side, I do kind of like the idea of just being able to put a prompt into Minecraft and being like, generate me a mini game that's zombie
You ain't
apocalypse.
gonna play Minecraft. What are you
Bro,
talking about?
I've got like
He
400
always he
hours in
always
Minecraft.
does this, Tom. He uses this like Minecraft example, but like we all know, Jez, you're not playing Minecraft.
Dude, I got like 400 hours in Minecraft. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. When's the
They
last
need
time
to
you
do a
played
crossover
Minecraft?
with
I
Warcraft,
played it
and
last
then
year.
he'll play it.
Well, okay, Warcraft then. Put it in Warcraft. Be
Well,
maybe player generated quests. Like you get a token every week. You can generate a player quest, and if the player does the quest and if they like it, you get some kind of reward. You could easily do that. Like generate the dialogue, the
let's
characters.
yeah, sure. What about Overwatch 2, huh? What about your baby?
In Overwatch 2, you could be like, generate me a game mode, which is like a zombie apocalypse against or an Omnic Crisis level where you fight waves of robots or whatever. I don't know.
And the
Because
robots have like 7 fingers, and
yeah,
it's
I mean,
okay. The
it's
robots.
okay because they're robots, but it's like if it's user generated content, it's not taking anyone's job, right? Because the user made it, right? You know, that's kind of like how you sell it. Is that you bake it into user generated content, and then you can blame the users. It's kind of like NFTs, right? Where it's like, oh, we didn't set the price, the user set the price, or disregarding NFTs. It's like the Counter Strike skins. We didn't set the price, the user set the price. You know, so nobody's mad at Valve when there's a skin that costs like $1 million because it's the market forces.
It's
I
the
don't know.
market.
Market forces, baby. Yeah, we got any more
Hmm.
questions for Tom Rand from the thread, and then we'll
Yeah, we got a
we'll wrap it up.
Vito who says it's kind of similar to John's question, but multi-source everything since you both are actual journalists, but only on Windows Central for Jez. But what companies do you think you have your best sources for information? We know Rand has a direct landline to Phil. That's not true. So I would imagine it'd be Microsoft for both of you two.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the platform side. I don't have good sources at any game company really. For me, yeah, it's the
I'm gonna keep quiet on my sources.
Mm.
yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, it's like it's not necessarily a platform source, more so. Um, I've got sources. I've said this before on the show. I got sources who like allow me to debunk when something's wrong on the platform side, but a lot of my actual sources for information, it's often through intermediaries, like the supply chains and stuff. I think Zach's talked about that before. You know, with his famous Surface Neo review,
Oh
unofficial.
god, yeah.
Yeah,
He
got
just trolls eBay all day. I think
yeah. He
just
got
looking for like prototype Surface devices.
prototype shit. He's got so many
Yeah,
prototypes. He got in a lot of trouble. I think
yeah, I know,
it's quite. But he just loves it. He loves his Surface. He's got the Surface coffee table. You know the big Surface
yeah.
table. Have you seen it?
He's a lunatic.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
It's
dude's a
crazy.
lunatic. And
Love it though.
but,
But yeah, I'd say a lot of the time, it's like sometimes with a story, it's like a jigsaw, right? You got like a piece of the puzzle, but you don't have the whole thing. So it's like trying to work it out and piece it all together, and then it like clicks, and you're like, ah,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
this all
definitely.
makes sense now. And then once you've got a part of it, you can go back to other people, and then they start telling you more because they know that it's just that's generally how it works.
They want it framed accurately rather than
Yeah,
misleadingly. Once you know bits and pieces, kind of thing.
yeah, that's my main thing is I never want to put something out there that's like straight up wrong. So
Yes.
hence the considering.
Yeah. Hence the
Yeah.
Although you will,
considering.
I mean, most of those considerings have been considered and done. So
Yeah, well, I
yeah,
believe when you first reported, well, at the time it was Gear 6, but you said that was not
yeah. Well,
being considered
I just said next, what
the
not
next
being
Gears.
considered.
Did you know it
Yeah.
was a prequel before
I
your
didn't know
reporting?
exactly what it was. I didn't know if it was prequel, sequel, or what. I just knew it was like Gears Next,
See,
essentially.
me and Jez had, well, we don't have a bet, but I keep on telling Jez they're never going back to Gear 6. What do you
Right.
think? Am I right or is Jez right?
Uh, well, with the fact that they've gone E-Day, I don't know. Maybe it gives them more leeway to explore the rest of it. But yeah, I don't know. Do they go back to Gear 6? Probably not.
Because I was saying like if you release Gear 6 and it's a bigger success than 5 ever was, which presumably it will be because it's going to be on more platforms, right?
Right.
It's like why would you go back to finish that story that didn't have a lot of interest in it? You could probably tell a new trilogy set within E-Day
It's true.
leading into the release of the new Gears, and Jez didn't want to hear that. He's like, no, I gotta finish 6. I was like, well, you know what? Maybe they could release DLC for E-Day that finishes the story of 6 in like 3 hour DLC. But I'm like, they're not going. And then Jez told me like, I've been told that you're wrong. I'm like, oh, we'll see. We'll see.
Do you think they'll do anything different with the Gears collection stuff if that happens? I mean, that's like basically an open secret right now, right? Bill's playing like Gears 2 with like
Yeah.
colleagues for some reason.
The
Yeah,
Gears
rumor
2 and
is
3 is
that
great.
there's no multiplayer.
Yeah, that makes sense though, because it just cuts down on the port costs, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
See, Jez said the opposite. Jez says it would actually take more work to cut it out of the game.
Depends how integrated.
well, yeah, it does, doesn't it? But I feel like spinning up all the servers and I don't know. Yeah, it's probably just like, okay, let's just make this easy to port it across the Switch and PlayStation. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I don't
makes sense.
know. I mean, multiplayer was a big part of the
It
Gears
was.
experience,
Yeah.
and having a collection not have the multiplayer is a choice. Now, my thought was like, well, they're going to release E-Day, and E-Day is a multiplayer, so they want people playing E-Day that probably has like the microtransactions and the battle passes and all that stuff that you would have in a modern shooter, and all the old stuff wouldn't. But then, like, this has been rumored for 3 years, if not more, because I think you told Nick that it existed even before he talked about it, right?
Yeah.
And then I think I said live on the show, it was like, well, maybe this is one of the reasons Microsoft's going multi-platform, because how long does it take to remaster 360 games? Does it take 3 years? I mean, I
No.
don't know. I don't know anything about development, but that certainly seems like a long time to remake 360. Not even like remake, like just because the rumor was it was just Gears 2 that was getting remade in Unreal Engine 5. I don't know. I
Yeah,
suppose we need to see everything and what it looks
I
like.
don't
And
know exactly how it's like finishing up. But I think some of the work was complicated, shall we say? I think that's
complicated.
that's probably why. I think that's probably why it's netted out with the fact that multiplayer's not there. Like that probably
A
reflects.
co-op has to be there though, because that was another
Oh yeah,
rumor
I'd imagine so.
that it might just be single player, and I'm like, no, co-op is so integral to Gears.
That's like integrated in. So I
Yeah,
can't see how they'd be able to rip that out with. Yeah, that would just cause more work to rip it out than keep it in. But multiplayer does make sense in some ways. So
you don't think people would see the collection and be turned off by it not having multiplayer?
I don't think so. I mean, you got to think this collection is also, if they're launching it on PS5 and Switch 2, then it's opening up to people who have never experienced Gears before, right? So does it necessarily matter that multiplayer is not there for them? I don't know. So if you look at it from that perspective, sure, but yeah, I don't necessarily know that it matters.
What do you
We'll see.
What are you looking at for Xbox support of the Nintendo Switch 2 launch in at least the direct in April?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see like if they're heavily involved in that or not. But they are doing a bunch of games, so
I
you'd
feel like
imagine they will
that's
be.
the announcement of Master Chief Collection for Switch and PlayStation right there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be collection in the
Mm.
sense of you know.
Oh, really?
Not like
Wouldn't think of it.
not like the collection as it exists right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't think of it of every game. Put it that way. Probably the most I can say on it.
Interesting. That
Do you
makes you
think
think.
just Gears 1 anniversary, maybe?
Well, you said Halo. Did
No,
you say
Halo.
Halo?
Halo 1.
Yeah.
Halo Combat Evolved. What was
Well,
it?
you remember I reported that they were doing the CE stuff for
The CE
PS5.
remake.
Yeah.
Right.
Ah.
I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in a remake of the first game at all.
I think it depends how they do it. But yeah,
What if you're a Switch player who's never
it's
played it before? Rand.
exactly. It's another. This is the thing. It's not really for Xbox fans. It's for okay, if you've never played it, you want PlayStation. You know, somehow
Sure.
you never played Halo.
I get that. Like I'm talking about from my perspective, but I also think like
Yeah.
for how long it would have been in development, would it have been in development like say they started making this 2-3 years ago? Were they already targeting Switch and PlayStation 2-3 years ago? Or is that more of a recent thing?
I think
You know,
that's more of a recent thing because they obviously announced the Halo. Is it Halo Studio now? Is that what it's called?
yeah, Halo
So
Halo Studios, yeah.
Halo Studios, and that's all like Unreal Engine 5. So I suspect that that's a lot to do with this, and why it's probably a little bit more limited on the cross-platform work. So
Mm.
yeah,
Interesting.
because they're doing the Project Foundry work, which is like they're saying it's not a game, it's not a tech demo, but that's the sort of exact sort of thing you would want to do if you were going to remake, you know, an older game. So yeah,
Interesting.
going to be interesting.
We have to figure out what Tom's talking about, Jazz.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Very interesting indeed.
And I guess we'll get you out of here on this question. What
Sure.
game are you most looking forward to? Doesn't have to be this year. You know, it could just the game that if you can't wait to play from anybody.
I don't know. Like the cop out is obviously GTA 6 because I am actually
Yeah.
really looking forward to that. But like in terms of some of the Xbox games that are coming up, South of Midnight, like I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. I'm not gonna lie, because I think just the art in that game looks so good.
Poor Jazz is
And Doom.
blacklisted.
What?
How is it?
Aren't you blacklisted? Or is that just Obsidian?
I think I'm blacklisted by them.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Man. What have
I
you
won't
done?
ask.
Wait, what? Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Well, it's because he leaked the concept art for the game. you
Oh
remember.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tut.
Come on, Jazz.
my
The
bad.
Doom looks good as well. Like that does look good. So, but I tell you what, actually, Fable. Out of all of them, Fable, I'm really looking forward to. I think because of the British humour, like that's
Right.
right up my street. So
Richard Ayoade
yeah.
is a god.
Yeah, I'm not too
Fable-
bothered about like Outer Worlds 2. I don't know. Avowed, yeah.
Marathon. I thought you'd be like somewhat curious about Marathon.
I'm curious about Marathon, but I think I've just got this almost bias of the fact that I went through years of pain with Destiny PvP. So I feel like, are they actually going to nail this? Like, I don't know. I'm very wary of that. But yeah, and also I'm a first person shooter kind of guy. So Marathon just doesn't immediately strike me as something that I want to play.
Oh, do you think? Did they say if Marathon's going to be third or first? I don't know.
I can't remember whether they did actually, but no, I can't remember. I think it is first person. Yeah, I think
would
they have.
think so.
Yeah, but it's more that
Well-
it's an extraction shooter. That's not my sort of thing.
Yeah, I think doesn't that change? Isn't it more supposed to be like a hero shooter now? Apparently, maybe with some extraction shooter elements. I guess.
I think they've also been working, or they were working on some sort of hero shooter concept. So that might be what you're thinking of.
Do you remember when Halo Infinite was a hero shooter?
Yes. Fantastic.
I think it'd be huge if it was a hero shooter.
You think?
Hero shooters are the future, don't you know?
Marvel Rivals, baby.
Marvel's Rivals is global 8th for revenue, I think, right now. Doing really well.
I've been playing a bunch of it, to be honest, but it's okay. I don't mind it.
Overwatch was up 3 points, 3 places on the global revenue chart, and it's 17th. So it's
have they
coming
got
back.
the 6v6? Is 6v6 back in Overwatch like
Not
in
fully.
quick play or whatever?
No, not fully.
It's still like some weird hidden away mode.
Yeah, it's like one of them brawl event kind of things, but the new perk system's really good. Adds a lot of flavor to the game, and also lets Torbjorn stick turrets to walls and ceilings, which is hilarious. I've been enjoying it.
Sounds
it
sounds bad.
Yeah, it's causing a lot of upset in the community with people who aren't Torbjorn.
I can imagine. I haven't played it. I was just looking on Steam. I haven't played Overwatch 2 since January.
Give it a go with the perks. Some of the perks are really fun. They
Okay.
You sort of like over the course of the match, you get levels, a bit like a MOBA, and then by the end, you've got like
Interesting.
three perks. The last perk's quite powerful towards the end of the match, and
Yeah,
Torbjorn's
that's cool.
lets him stick. It lets him stick his turrets on walls and floors and he can throw it really far, so you can like flank people really easily with it. They've just nerfed the hit
That's
points
fun.
of it, actually. I'm just reading now in response to that. So it'll be easier to kill if you pick that perk. But
Have you played Fragpunk?
I haven't, but I keep getting press releases
Okay.
for it. Have you played it? Is
Yeah,
it any good?
it's interesting. Yeah, I've played it for like probably like I don't know 10 hours or something. Yeah, it's okay. Like it's interesting in the sense that you have this like card system where you all vote on a card and it kind of puts a modifier in the game. So it feels like every game is different, which is interesting. With like they have like a big head mode, which is kind of like the N64
Yeah,
GoldenEye
I
mod
remember
thing.
that. All the
Yeah,
games had a big head mode back then for some reason.
yeah. But like I like that aspect that there's those like built-in mods that you sort of control as a team. Yeah, and some of them's like removing point A, so everyone has to rush to B. You know, like there's some fun ones. So yeah, I think it's got potential, but I don't know these shooter games. You know,
There's a lot of
what
them.
was the other one? Spectre Divide came and went. The finals has kind of been struggling. Like,
Spectre Divide came and went and shut down. I think it was out for what, 2 weeks, and they already announced it's shutting down in a month.
What, really?
Yeah, it wasn't out for long.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's gone. So yeah.
And then Fragpunk made fun of them in a now infamous
they?
tweet. Oh, you didn't see that?
Oh, I didn't see that. No.
Famous last words on that
Yeah.
one.
They
Oh,
Spectre
jeez.
Divide, they posted the thing about how they were shutting down, and Fragpunk posted the Captain America meme of like
Oh
them.
no.
Yeah, and then they had to post a tweet being like, a post earlier on our social media was awful, and we
Didn't represent our values.
Yeah. I
I
was
was
just like,
like,
yikes.
how did I miss that? I don't know how I missed that. I've been so busy the last few weeks. So yeah.
It's like, bros, watch out, because Fragpunk, you're probably going to shut down in a year from now, anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
it doesn't look good for like when the problem is just so many of these sort of live service games. It's just like everyone just plays Fortnite, right? That's the default back to that one. So it's so hard to compete. I don't know. Just,
Well, Sony's got
they're-
their new studio. They're apparently working on a shooter of some kind, probably a live service.
yeah, yeah.
What was this? Jason Blundell's team, former Treyarch guy, who formed the studio Deviation Games, which ended up basically shutting down, and then Sony took the best parts of that and formed a new studio.
Right.
We'll see how
Well,
that
as long
goes.
as they don't make it anything like Concord, they'll be fine. But
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I want to thank Tom for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
It was a lot
Tom.
of
yeah,
fun.
no.
Thanks, Tom, for
Been fun.
joining us. I'll have to get you back next time. There's a big hardware
Yeah.
thing.
Next time we need to have a beef or something like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
some
Diss
beef.
track.
This track.
I'll be here.
London
Ready for the
grime.
Cannon.
Oh,
I love
man.
how everyone thought that like, directly attacking your. Even you did, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah, I
that
did a little
tweet.
bit at first, but I was also
I
very,
sometimes
very
I just don't word. Yeah, sometimes I just don't word tweets properly, which is my fault. I just don't think. I'm like,
People were like, "What the heck
people
is
know
this?"
what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of like, it's kind of funny because I didn't see really a lot of what other people were writing about it. And then I saw like some major mainstream tabloids in the UK covered it as an Xbox handheld. I was like, oh, I get
the
what you mean.
headlines were crazy on
I
all the other
get,
publications.
yeah, I saw
It was
where you were
literally
coming from
Xbox
there.
handheld.
But I was like,
which I think it creates a weird expectation for it because it's not going to play Xbox games. So it's like,
yeah,
it's not really an Xbox handheld.
Yeah,
Unless
that's
this is
Microsoft's
an
problem to
Xbox.
figure out, though.
It
Yeah,
is. It's true. Yeah.
But they
know?
say but then Microsoft's out here calling everything an Xbox, so they're fully knee deep in that universe of confusing everyone. It's their MO, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
They love a marketing, message.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a ton for joining us, Tom. Let the good people of
Yeah,
the
no worries.
Xbox 2 universe know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, I am at theverge.com, obviously. I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you call it these days, Tom Warren, all one word, and Blue Sky as well, Tom Warren.
Cool. And I think with that, we're going to rock on out of here. Thanks everyone for joining us on Patreon, and also if you're listening to this later on YouTube or Spotify, we hugely appreciate you. All Tom's links are in the description, and we'll see you on Friday for the next main Xbox 2 show. Thanks everyone, and we're out.